If you are a frequent listener to the podcast, you know that we have been sponsored by Fuji Sports for quite some time now. Whether you're looking for apparel, equipment, bags, or accessories, Fuji Sports has got it covered. Go to Fujisports.com to see the latest selection of everything you need for your jiu-jitsu, judo, or MMA journey. That's Fujisports.com. Let me take a minute to tell you about RŌL TV. If you're looking to take your jiu-jitsu to the next level and supplement your BJJ education, then RŌL TV has you covered. RŌLAcademy.tv has over 1,500 videos covering individual techniques, positions, and concepts, including seminars and workshops with top-level competitors and instructors like Kris Olivo, Robert Drysdale, Aaron Hurley, Emily Kwok, and more. Whether you are a beginner or more advanced student, RŌL TV is the online platform that can take your jiu-jitsu to the next level. What's up, everyone, and welcome back. If you haven't already, please hit the like, share, subscribe, download, listen, and whatever other button there is, and leave us a review wherever you listen. This helps us bring you the great guests and amazing content that you've come to expect. In this conversation, Thomas's guest shares his journey from a challenging childhood to becoming a successful jiu-jitsu practitioner and entrepreneur. He discusses the importance of trusting the process, embracing uncertainty, and the role of control in his life. He reflects on his military experience, the humbling first day of jiu-jitsu, and the significance of communication and training. He emphasizes the need for personal growth and the impact of choices on one's life path, ultimately advocating for a mindset that minimizes regret. Here's the RŌL Radio with a PGF and UFC BJJ veteran, a Robert Drysdale black belt, and the owner of Potential Jiu-Jitsu in Las Vegas, Nevada, Kris Olivo.
Welcome to RŌL Radio.
And we're live. Kris, welcome to the show. How is your morning?
Man, my morning's good. Not too bad. It's beautiful here in Las Vegas. How's everything over there?
Well, it's not beautiful. It's 20 degrees.
Oh, that's rough.
It's brutal.
Yeah, it's like 70 here.
You know what's ironic about all this? That I was actually in Texas over the Thanksgiving, and the day I flew back in, we got like 8 inches of snow. So I regret my life choices right now. But
that's rough, man. I've been to Chicago in the winter, and it's definitely cold, like colder than what I'm used to. I grew up in New Jersey, and so we had like all 4 seasons, but Chicago winter is definitely colder than New Jersey winter.
It's brutal.
I feel bad for you.
Don't ask me why I live here. I have no idea. But here we are. Here we are. You know, I mentioned this before we got on the air, interesting part behind your story is the diversity of not only locations, but the choices that you've made over your life and what led you to be who you are today. Right off the bat, I want to ask you, do you feel like things happen for a reason, or are we in charge of our destiny, essentially?
I think we have a certain level of control. I think our ability to get lucky relies somewhat on us, right? Like if you're constantly showing up, constantly putting in effort, then you're more likely to get lucky and things are more likely to align for you. And I think going forward, it doesn't always make sense. I'm a big believer that life really makes sense when you're looking backwards. But I think we have a level of control to where we can kind of affect the odds of basically where we go.
Elaborate on that a little bit more, because just recently, literally, I think last month, I had a conversation on the show with somebody who said, I don't look back. I have no interest in anything that happened behind me. I only look forward. And I'm not sure which one is right, or if there is one even, but elaborate. What do you mean by looking back?
I feel like when you get to a certain place, right? Somewhere where you've kind of thought about going to in the future, like say you set a goal really, really far in the future, right? And then you get there. I think it makes sense to look back as to how you even got there. Right. And I feel like part of enjoying life is kind of savoring the journey. And, you know, part of that is looking forward. But if you're constantly looking forward, I feel like you don't get to appreciate where you've been. Um, and so I like to look back every so often to kind of just appreciate the steps and all the different things that I've done to get me to where I am today. And I feel like in those moments, sometimes they don't make sense, right? You're like, why am I going through this? Why am I going through that? But every single decision, every single thing that you do, every action you take leads you to your next point. And so whenever you get somewhere where it's like, oh man, I used to dream about being here, right? Well, you can't get to where you are now if you kind of like you couldn't have got to where you are now without all the steps you took previously. And so I think it makes sense sometimes to kind of look at it. And for me, it's not necessarily just like living in the past, it's appreciating the randomness and the uncertainty that I had in those moments. Because there's a lot of times in life where I've like done stuff and it didn't make sense at the time uh, to a lot of other people. But I just always felt like I was kind of putting my best foot forward and then things just kind of fall into place over time. People tend to say that they fell into place. Well, they only fell into place because of the specific actions you took over the course of your lifetime to get you there. And in those moments, it didn't necessarily make sense. You didn't have this grand plan of how everything was going to work out, but every action you took was crucial to where you are right now. Like this conversation we're having, we would never have this conversation if you didn't take all the steps you took in your life to get you to where you are, and I didn't take all the steps, right? And that randomness is something I appreciate because whenever I have uncertainty of where I'm going next, I just trust in the fact that like this is all going to make sense in the future. And looking back, I'd be like, oh yeah, that made sense for where I was at the time. I didn't really understand it then, but I understand it now. If that makes
There,
sense.
there's a certain level of simplicity in what you are describing. Essentially, trust the process. I
Hmm.
mean, that's essentially
Yeah,
what you're saying. This is very similar to when somebody steps on a mat for the very first time, and it's confusing. We don't know why things happen to us. Oftentimes, I mean, there's a lot of emotions that might be associated with this, right? I mean, it's a puzzle essentially, and oftentimes instructors will say, trust the process. Just allow me to show you how. Let me allow you to
hmm
guide you through this experience, right? And that's essentially what you're describing, right?
basically, you don't need to know every single detail. You just need to understand and just take one step after the other. Trust the process, move forward one step, one foot in front of the other, and then eventually you get somewhere. But in the moment when you're doing it, you don't always know where you're going. You just kind of have to have a level of faith. And that's what I mean that like I think we have a certain level of control over what we're doing. Like, I'm gonna show up, I'm gonna do this. Like I had like me making it to the UFC for jiu-jitsu, for instance, or having my own academy, right? Like, I didn't know I was going to do that. I had no idea I was going to do any of that. If you asked me 10 years ago, like, Kris, do you think you would be a professional grappler and own a gym? I'd be like, no idea. No, probably not. That doesn't sound realistic. But, I know that I enjoy jujitsu and I know that I just show up every single day. And then over time, you just keep committing to putting your best foot forward and then things fall into place. And um, that wasn't anything that I had a lot of intention behind, but it makes sense looking back now, how I got here. But looking forward back then wouldn't have made sense.
Well, and we'll talk about the UFC and your academy because these are big milestones in your life. But then explain to me, why is this so difficult when we are in the moment? Like things happen to us, and oftentimes this is why I think a lot of people have anxiety and stress in their life, where they don't trust the process and they trying to be in the very control like scenario,
Hmm.
trying to dictate what will be happening.
I think you said it best. It comes down to control. People don't like uncertainty and people like to control everything around them. And I think the moment you let go of control, you allow flow. And so for me, my life is very much about flow. I've taken a lot of risk over the course of my life, and that has led me to where I am. And I think that if I was overly trying to control everything around me, I don't think I would have taken those risks because I stepped into areas where I knew I had no control. And all I could do, the only thing I can control is my own effort. And so I think oftentimes humans get too focused on trying to know everything and control everything, and that's just not how life works. We're not masters of this domain, you know. Like however badly you want to believe that, I just don't find it to be true.
Is this something that switched in you as life went on, or you developed this kind of mentality, or perhaps this is sourcing from you serving in Air Force, or where's this coming from?
I think it comes deeper than that. Like it comes from my childhood. I grew up in like a really, really poor neighborhood. And I got into a lot of fights, and there was just a lot of things that I didn't have control over. And at first I fought it, and like it caused me a lot of stress, um, and kind of a lot of despair. And I made decisions based off of me trying to get a grip on my life, right? Like there was a lot of chaos around me. Like nothing was very stable. And
how old are you? Are you which stage
I'm
of your age?
33.
No. I'm talking about what you're
I'm 33.
describing.
Oh, yeah. I'm talking about like early childhood, like 5 years old, was when I realized everything was around me was chaotic. Like I remember looking around at like the people in my family, people around me, and just realizing like there's a lot of people that I don't want to be like, and I don't like the lack of control that I feel.
Wait, but you're 5 years old, even 7,
Yeah.
fine, 10. All of these are extremely mature thoughts for somebody who's so young. Like how are you coming to these conclusions?
Basically from pain. Like I mean, at 5 years, I was very, very conscious as a kid. I used to get beat up a lot, and I remember like the feeling of helplessness of not being able to like actually defend myself, and like not having any control over whether like basically harm came to me or not, right? Like people would just beat me up, I would get jumped, stuff like that. And I remember like on my birthdays, I would wish for control. Like realistically, I was wishing to have like some sort of authority over myself, right? And I remember like I would like ask God to like make me into a warrior to where like I could, have control over whether people hurt me or not. And then like, my parents got divorced when I was 5 years old. I have very vivid memories of like my father leaving and stuff like that, and like them fighting all the time. And my mom dated a bunch of people after, that weren't very good men, and they used to like hit her and stuff. And I remember even then, like hating the fact that I had no control over the situation. And so I focused really, really hard on trying to make decisions that would give me a little bit more control over my surroundings, over my life. And it wasn't until I got a lot older that I realized that doesn't really truly exist. You can never control everything. All you can control is yourself.
Was there one specific moment or event or subset of events that allows you to come to that conclusion that I have to let go?
That was much, much later. Like when I left the military, I realized I had to let go. Like if I wanted to get through, I had to really release a grip, and then not let fear control me. And so I had to just like kind of put myself in a state of like basically whatever happens, happens. And so what I do is I will explore basically like worst case scenarios in my head. I'm like, can I accept worst case scenario? And if the answer is yes, then okay, I'll assume that level of risk because I've already accepted the worst that could possibly happen. And then it allows me to just basically move through something without having the need to control everything, because even in a worst case scenario, I know that ultimately everything's going to be all right. And so I think that happened mostly when I left the military because I was starting my life all over again. And I didn't just go get like a traditional job. I went into entrepreneurship, which you have very little control in kind of that world. I can't really control basically anything.
Wait, everybody thinks that if you own your own business, you don't do anything. You just, it's
That's
easy.
not the case. It's not the case. That's definitely not the case.
No, like, if you love what you do, you don't work a day in your life. That's not true.
Yeah, that's not true either. That's not true either. I love what I do, and I work pretty hard.
Yeah. I feel like entrepreneurship is probably harder than most regular jobs, but that's a separate topic that we'll leave it for now.
We could definitely get into that too, but yeah, this feeling of control has been pervasive throughout my entire life.
So, I mean, clearly your childhood was, rough. I mean, experiencing and witnessing some of those things is not difficult for a young boy. Is that one of the reasons why you stepped into military?
Yeah, I stepped in the military because I had no control over my life, basically. So let me take you back a little bit. Around 14, my life was extremely unstable, right? We were moving around all the time. I didn't have an address. I couldn't go to school. I failed a year of school, right? And I was like, all right, if I don't if I don't want to end up like everybody else around me, I have to do something different, right? And so I made the decision to leave my mother, who I lived with, and my little sisters, and my little brother, and to take an offer from my father to go move in with him, so I could get a little bit of control over my life, right? And so I had some stability, and I started like really paying attention to school and trying to do my best because I was like, I need to like actually get a grip on everything, right? And I spent about 4 years with him before we got into this big argument. You know, we didn't get along really well. We butt heads a lot, mostly because I felt like he was trying to control me, and I didn't really like authority. And so we got into a big fight. I ended up moving out at 18 and started living with a friend. I was a junior in high school at 18 because I failed a year of school. And so I lived with my best friend, and then graduated. And then I was living with his family and everything. And so it was really, really weird. But that was another situation where I was like, man, like, what am I doing? Like, like, I can't afford anywhere to live. It's nice that these people took me in. But again, I have no control over my life again. And the entire purpose of me moving here was for me to get a grip, and now I have none, you know? And then I ended up going to the military because I didn't have any other option. I was like, I can't afford going to school. I was like, I need something to pull me out of here right now. And the military is going to at least give me some stability, which is what I've lacked my entire life, which will give me some semblance of control. And
Is
then
this
that's what led me
is
to
this
that.
your idea?
What, the military?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Everybody told me not to. At the time, like my parents, my mom didn't want me to do it. My dad didn't really want me to do it. Him and I would talk a little bit after I moved out. Now, we didn't have a very good relationship then, for obvious reasons. My friends told me I was dumb for doing it because like I was very academically inclined, and they're like, "Why are you gonna go to the military? You know, if you're so academically inclined." But I was like, "Dude, I literally have no option." My best friend that I lived with moved, and he went to college, and like he was staying at the college, and I was like, I can't just live here with his parents. It's super weird, so I got to get out of here. So that was the only way I saw as like a good escape, and so I was like, this has to work.
Chris, let me run this by you because listening to this story as an outsider, it appears to me as you don't like authority. You said that. You want to be in control. Going into military, it feels like an oxymoron. You're giving up control. You
Yep.
need to submit yourself to authority. And this, you're not seeking that. You're seeking the opposite. So
Yep.
run me through your mindset here at that time. Why does this make sense?
It it made sense because I didn't have any other options. I was like, I want to control my life, and in order for me to get ahead, I have to be put in a structure that allows me to do that, right? And I was like, if I don't do this, I'm basically going to be homeless. And I was like, sure, you know, I get to tell myself what to do, right? But I'm also homeless. So, you know, that's not really a winning scenario. And so I was like, in order for me to move forward, I have to let go, and basically just kind of commit myself to listening to whatever these people tell me to do for however long I do it. And I'm very good at like compartmentalizing and obsessing over things. And so I feel like that's one of my superpowers is that when I fully jump into something, I'll like really, really jump into it. And I was like, all right, well, if I'm going to do this, then I'm going to try to be the best I possibly can be at it. That way I can move up quickly. And then if I move up quickly, then I'm not at the bottom, kind of just being told what to do all the time. And so, um, you know, I did well in the military, but because of how much control it had over me, that was the reason why I ended up leaving to begin with. and why I decided to go down the entrepreneurial route, because I didn't like how much control it had over my life. So I use that as a stepping stone.
Yeah. What was that difficult for you? That time in the military?
It wasn't. It wasn't. So the first 3 years were really hard. The last 3 years were really easy. So the first 3 years, I was an airplane mechanic, and so I didn't get a choice at doing that job, because the job I joined for was called EOD. So it's like basically disarming bombs. I wanted to like be a counterterrorism expert. That's basically what I wanted to do. I was like, oh, I can't really see myself doing, like, when I would like picture like what is Kris supposed to do in the future, like what is future me doing, I would sit there and I would just draw a blank. I'm like, oh man, there's no like calling that I have. There's not like, some people know they're going to be a doctor. Some people know they're going to be an engineer. I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I have no idea. I'm not really interested in basically anything. I was like, law enforcement interests me somewhat, um, just because of like kind of my own sense of justice. And so I was like, I could go after bad guys. Maybe that'll be the thing. Like ideally get into the FBI or do something like that. I spoke to my uncle who was career military, and I told him, I was like, I think I want to like eventually land a job in the FBI or something. What should I do in the military to like kind of set myself up for that in the future? And he was like, anything counterterrorism, so like EOD. And I was like, all right, let me see what this EOD thing is. Looked it up and then saw that there was a movie on it called The Hurt Locker, which is not accurate representation of the career field at all. Watched the movie, I was like, all right, I'm sold. That's what I'm gonna do. Okay. And then I joined his EOD. At the time, I was married. And so when I was in training for EOD, all my instructors kept telling me that EOD just stood for everyone's divorced, and that they all became instructors to save their marriages. And I was like, okay, well, I don't want to get a divorce, so maybe this isn't the right career field. And with any special ops job that's considered special ops, you have the option to DOR, which is drop on request. Basically, you can quit while you're in training still. Once you graduate, you can't quit. But when you're in training, you could say, hey, this isn't for me. I can't do this. And they'll reclass you to a completely different career field, because they don't want anybody in that role that doesn't actually want to be there, because then you can get people killed. Right. And so I was doing really well in the training. I was in great shape because I used to run all the time before I joined, because I didn't have a mode of transportation. So my own feet were basically how I would get around. And again, I was academically inclined, and with the EOD, you weren't allowed to take any of the study materials home because they were classified. And so you would go into class, you would have to learn what you were being taught, and then you would basically have to immediately take a test that day or the day after on what they taught. And so I'm very good at like remembering stuff and spitting it back out. And so I was doing really well. Physical portion, I was doing well. Academically, I was doing well. And then I quit. And then they were all like, why would you quit? You were probably going to pass. Like, you were doing great. And I was like, I just don't want to get a divorce, which, I ended up getting one anyway. So it didn't really matter. But that was my lead motivation for switching careers. Then I thought that they would put me into something that like I had like kind of the skill set for, because with the ASVAB they like group you into skill categories. And my lowest was mechanical, because I'm from New Jersey. I didn't grow up working on cars. I'm like an inner city kid, you know. We didn't have like my mom had a car, but like it just wasn't like, it's not part of our culture, you know. Um, and that's what they made me. They made me an airplane mechanic. And I remember sitting in like when I got the reclass papers, they were like, "Oh, you're the guy who gave me the orders was like, you're going to be a C-130 crew chief." I was like, "What is that?" So like that's like a general mechanic. You're basically in charge of the whole plane. You tell everybody what to do. I was like, "Okay." And I was like, "What's the plane?" And he's like, "C-130." And I was like, "Okay, I don't know what that is. Is that like a fighter jet, like one of those cool planes?" So like he's like, "No, it's not. It's a big cargo plane." And I was like, "All right, that sucks, but okay." And then I went through training for that. And even in the training, I knew I was like, I don't like this. Like, this is not my thing. Um,
This has to be difficult from one side, you want to be in control, but you are not in control in any aspect of any of this.
No, zero, absolute zero. I got stuck doing a job that I didn't have a natural inclination for, and that I also didn't like doing. And so I remember studying it, and like, you know, there's like all these like gearheads that were in the career field with me and we're in training, like people that like grew up working on cars and they're like so geeked out about this stuff. They love planes. When I joined, I told my recruiter two things. I was like, I don't want to be a mechanic. I don't really want to be on a plane because I don't like flying. I ended up being an airplane mechanic. I was like, this is the absolute opposite of what I wanted to do. And I was stuck. And I remember like feeling like this like wave of depression, like, fuck, what did I get myself into? But I didn't have a choice. So I tried really, really hard. Even though like learning that stuff wasn't very natural to me. Which now I'm grateful for it because I'm very handy and I feel like that helped me out a lot. I learned how to use tools. I didn't know anything about like what kind of tools to use, what they were called, or any of that stuff. And that matured me in a very particular way. But yeah, those 3 years were rough because I didn't have any control and I was stuck doing something I didn't want to do. I got assigned to South Georgia, somewhere I didn't really like being. And I learned quickly that the amount of effort you put in the military isn't always a representation of what you get back. And I did not like that because I'm like, that's a prime example of me not having any control. Even though I put in as much effort as I possibly can, I may get skipped over for promotions, for rewards, and all sorts of stuff like that, just because of politics and how things go here. And so that happened to me a lot, which is ultimately kind of what led me to wanting to separate, was it not being fair.
Is that decision difficult for you, or does it come naturally as a buildup of the circumstances over the 6 years of things not being fair?
Yeah, you know, it was I knew I wanted to basically like change jobs, but when you're in the military, it's very difficult to do that. Like it's very rare to be able to change jobs while you're in your first enlistment. When you reenlist, it's a lot easier to reclass. I was 3 years in and I was like severely depressed. I got overweight, um, and like I just wasn't my best self. Like if you compare me then to me now, you're like, yo, those are two completely different people. And it was it wasn't hard for me to switch because I was in so much pain, basically. You know, as humans, I feel like we move away from pain much faster than we move toward pleasure. And so if something is extremely uncomfortable, then I think that ultimately it motivates us to make a change, which is what has led me to everything I've done. And so the decision to change wasn't very hard. Um, but staying there would have been very difficult. That's actually when I found jujitsu. It was right at that 3 year mark when I was like super depressed. Um, I found jujitsu and I got a new job all around the same time.
Talk to me about the first day in jiu-jitsu. Do you know what jiu-jitsu is at that point of time?
No, I had no idea.
You
I had
clueless.
no idea. Yeah, clueless. So I had an idea of like, I just knew it was grappling, but I didn't
Okay.
really know, like, I didn't know that it wasn't striking. I didn't know anything. And like I didn't know the difference between traditional like Japanese jiu-jitsu and Brazilian jiu-jitsu. Um, my my thought process was Brazilian jiu-jitsu was for really small people. And so I remember thinking like, oh, if I was gonna learn one, I should probably learn the like regular jiu-jitsu, not the Brazilian one, because I'm not like that small, you know, which is a really, really stupid thought.
There's logic
But
behind it, okay.
yeah, not really. But
So how do you
yeah, I
find
walked
this?
into
I
an
mean, you are in military, right? So like, is this on
Mhm.
base, off base? How do you find the
It's
place?
off base. Yeah, so it's off base. One, there wasn't many options to choose from because I'm in like this small town in South Georgia. I had hit my 3 year mark. I was overweight. I was depressed, and I was like, I need to do something. I've been killing myself to try to like get promoted, to try to do everything I could. I started like a community service program. I volunteered hundreds of hours. I ran donation drives. I was going to school full time while I was still in, and I was basically just like I was working like 60 to 80 hours a week doing like hard labor. Like it's like the literally manual labor, being a mechanic, carrying shit, going on top of planes, taking things off. And so I was just really burnt out and depressed. And I was like, and every award that I went up for to try to get, I didn't get, even though I was more than qualified. And it was always some reason why, oh, you know, this cycle they had to give it to a woman, or, you know, the package that your supervisor was supposed to write for you, they didn't write it in time. And there was just like always some sort of reason as to why I wasn't getting picked, even though I was outworking my peers, which would bother me because those people would get promoted or get like these accolades. And like, I knew I was working harder than them. And I just like got pissed off. I was like, all right, well, I'm going to stop working so hard to like try to stand out in the military, and I'm actually do something that I want to do. And so I quit going to school. And I was like, I want to learn how to do martial arts. I've always wanted to be a martial artist my whole life, ever since I was a kid. But I never had the money to be able to do anything like that. Like I remember asking my parents if I could do karate. They said, no, we can't afford it. And so I was like, I have some money now. I can pay for a gym membership. So I started looking around, and there was like two schools. First school I walked into, at the time, it was called like Reflex MMA. And so I was like, okay, cool, an MMA gym. I love the movie Never Back Down. Me and my friends used to like fight in the backyard while I was in high school. We had no idea what we were doing. And I was like, I want to learn that. You know, I want to do that. And so I walked into this MMA gym, and my first coach, Cameron Neville, he's a shorter guy. I don't know how tall he is, maybe like 5'6", 5'7", or something like that. I'm not super tall myself, but I was taller than him. And I remember seeing him, and I'm like, you know, an East Coast guy. I'm from New Jersey. Grew up getting in a lot of fights. I never really won any of them, but you know, in my head, I was a good fighter. I was like, I know how to fight. I've been on so many fights. You know, I've
I
lost them
can't
all,
wait
but I
for
know how to
this.
fight. Yeah. And so I remember walking in and sizing him up, and like, you know, like I feel like people from the East Coast have a certain attitude to them. And like I definitely had that. And so I walked in the gym, and I was just like, hey, you know, I'm interested in like, you know, doing MMA. I want to learn how to do this. So I'm just kind of going to gyms and kind of seeing what that's like. And he's like, oh, okay, do you want to like take a class? I was like, you know, I'm not sure. Like, I want to make sure that like I'm in the right environment. Completely like kind of cocky and like narcissistic of me to say I was a total asshole. And I remember telling him, I was like, you know, like I want to make sure that I'm like in the right environment, because like I really want to be a fighter, and like I want to learn from somebody who knows how to like actually fight. And I was like, I don't know if this might be the right gym for me or not. Um, I don't want to hurt anybody. And like he was just like looking at
you
me, smiling,
you
and like,
saying all the right things.
yeah, a street warrior. And I told him, I was like, yeah, you know, I grew up getting into fights. I've gone to a lot of fights. I lied about like how many I've won. I'm like, I've won the most majority of them. And so like, you know, I feel like I could be good. And he's like, okay, well, do you want to take class? We can move around, see what you got. And I was just like, I don't want to hurt you. I don't want to hurt anybody. And my coach starts laughing at me. He's like, how about this? You take a class. If you manage to do anything to me, fine. You know, you're definitely not in the right place. He's like, but you know, if I submit you, or, you know, you quit or anything like that, then like maybe you sign up. And I was like, okay, whatever. I was like, so you want to like spar? Like, what do you want to do? You know? And like guy off the street right now, like if I was dealing with me in my own academy, I would be so fucking annoyed. Um, and so he's like, all right, like, you know, let's see how you move. Just try to hit me. And I remember like we put on gloves. I was like, you sure? And he's like, yeah, just try to hit me. I swing at him. I swing at him hard as hell too. I'm not even like trying to hold anything. Miss completely. He tags me in the stomach. I get folded over. And I'm like, okay, no, this guy got lucky. He takes me down. I start trying to get up. I can't get up. He just beats the shit out of me, basically. And I'm like, I have this realization. I'm like, and again, comes down to control. I was just like, oh my God, there are people out there who can absolutely kill you with their bare hands, and you can't do anything about it. And I really didn't think the gap was going to be as big as it was between me and him, especially because I was bigger than him. And I just like, I immediately got humbled. I was like, I need to actually learn how to do this. And then I told him, I was like, I've never had anybody that did that to me like that. I was like, I would definitely like to sign up here and learn from you. And then my attitude shifted immediately because he beat me up. So That's how I started.
Many people, many people would leave that place and never come back.
Hmm.
That's a very humbling experience. I mean, all jokes aside, as funny as that story is, I mean, that's a big mental shift that takes place at that moment. You think you are something, and you're being proven against your own will that you're
Yeah,
really not.
that
And it's
you
not only
you're
that
not
there
at
is a
all. Yeah,
it's not only that there is a gap. The gap is so big that it's difficult to process all this. I mean, many people would say, fuck this, like, I'm leaving. This is nonsense.
yeah,
And your
yeah.
answer is the opposite. It is like, wait, no, I want to do this actually. And you change your attitude. Why?
I think one, like the idea that there are so many people out there in the world that can do this to me bothered me. I was like, this is like childhood all over again. I'm just getting beat up. I'm like, I need to learn from somebody who like can actually teach me how to actually defend myself. And two, I feel like I'm a very good student if like I respect the person I'm learning from. And so for him to beat me up like that, instantly made me respect him. And I was just like, please pour yourself into me. Like I'm ready to be a project. I've been craving a leader in my life. I've been craving some structure in my life that I haven't had. And I feel like I had been so far, like just like kind of like trying to figure everything out on my own. And so for me to have somebody to finally look up to and finally have a role model. You know, this guy owns a gym, he owns his own business, he's a fighter, he's living his life. I was like, that's somebody I want to be like. And there weren't many times in my life where I felt like I looked at somebody like that with like that like, please just teach me, please just like help me, you know. Because a lot of people in the military that I worked under, I had a level of respect for them, but it wasn't like that to where I was like, man, I want to be you so bad, you know? And
And
so
that's
with
after
him, I
just
was just like,
that's after one
one
session.
class, one class. I was like literally, like I had been I was still in the military, but I'm like, with this guy, if he told me to fight a fridge, I would go fight the fridge. Like I was just like so ready. I'm like, dude, I'll do anything you say. If you tell me I have to run home, if you tell me I have to run back, like whatever it takes, I wanna have what you have. And I know that the only way to get that is for me to just put my head down and listen. And so I
It's
was ready to commit myself.
Isn't it fascinating how our mind or perspective can change over just one experience?
Yeah, it's incredible. It's incredible. Life changing.
Hmm.
Truly life changing. Changed my life
Have you
just from
have you
beating
ever
my ass that day.
have you ever talked to him what this looked like from his perspective?
Um, we've we've talked about it a little bit before. Him and I are still friends. I was actually texting him the other day. Um, and I'm very grateful towards him. Like I thank him all. I've thanked him over the years so many times. When I won Nogi Worlds, I immediately like sent him a message. You know, when I had my debut with the UFC, I immediately sent him a message. And so I'm incredibly grateful, and I feel like still very close to him. But we've joked around about it before, where I'm like, "Oh, remember? Like I thought I was gonna beat your ass," and he's like, "Yeah, you still think you can?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's a little different, a little different, a little different now." You know, I got 10 years in this thing. But yeah, I'm still very close with him, and we still kind of laugh and joke about it.
For those who know your story, know that that's not where you continued. You
Hmm.
moved across the country,
Yep.
right? A few years later, you move across the
Hmm.
country, and it was a very interesting decision-making process where you, as I understand, you were very selective of ending up with Robert
Yeah.
Drysdale. Walk me
Hmm.
through that process. You leaving military at that point.
No, so I hadn't left yet. So this is right at the 3-year mark. I trained with
Okay.
Cameron for about 2 months, about two
Okay.
or 3 months, right? And so I'm there 5 days a week, you know, and I'm doing MMA, not just jiu-jitsu. Like
Hmm.
I'm boxing, kickboxing, all the whole nine yards. And so I was still very depressed because I had to work this job that I hated, right? But jujitsu was giving me the escape that I needed. And so I had put in for reclassing, like basically a retraining to switch jobs. And I remember at the time, my job as a mechanic was critically manned, which means like all the personnel are critical to that mission. And so they don't typically release anybody out of the career field when you're in a critically manned. It just means you're understaffed, right? Because we had gone through what was called sequestration, where they let a bunch of people get out of the military before their contracts expired during the Obama administration. And so that led to us being like super understaffed, and we were already understaffed prior, so it didn't make any sense. But basically, nobody was getting out of the career field. People weren't able to switch jobs or anything like that. And I remember like seeing that I was in my early window, which is very rare for you to get selected in that early window to retrain, let alone when you're in critically manned. And so I was just like, I'm not going to lose anything by applying. Again, just putting forth some effort and seeing what happens. And I asked my supervisor if he could sign my package for me to apply for this job that I wanted. And he said no. And I was like, please, it's just a signature. He's like, nah, I'm not going to do that. What's the point of me signing it? You're not going to get it, is what he told me. And I was like, it's literally just a signature. Like, can you just sign off on it? And he said no. And so I was like, all right. And then I went above him and I went to his boss. And then he's like, I'll sign it, but you know you're not going to get it. Right. And I was just like, yeah, I know I'm not going to get it. I just want to try anyway. Right. And then I got in trouble for doing that. He got
Well,
mad
I would
at me. I
imagine
got
so.
chewed out. Yeah, he yelled at me. He was like screaming in my face over it. You think you could just go above me, blah, blah, blah. I was like, sir, respectfully, I asked you to sign it. You wouldn't. I just went to the next person in the chain of command. And I was like, I know I probably won't get it. And then I basically burned a bridge. I was like, now the rest of the time I'm going to be here is going to suck even more. And I wasn't anticipating to get it, anything. But I was just like, I feel like I have to do something for myself, right? About 2 weeks later, I got an email saying I was selected to get a new job. And I was just like, I remember reading it and I literally fell out of my chair. I was checking my email at work. I like closed my eyes. I was like, no way, no way, no way, no way. And I like read it again and it said I had been selected for the job that I applied for and that I was going to be leaving in, I don't even remember. It was like 3 weeks or something, 4 weeks. And like, I fell out of my chair. I like started like jumping up and down and like people were like, what are you excited about? And I was like, I'm getting reclassed. Like basically it's like I'm getting free. Like my parole is up. I'm leaving prison now, you know? And everybody was so mad. Everybody was like talking crap. They're like, oh, who do you know? Blah blah. It's like, bro, I don't know anybody. Nobody likes me around here. And even my boss was like so pissed off because they're not happy to see you leave prison. You know, they don't want you to leave. Like they're like, no, you're staying here with us. Like this sucks
Was
for
that
us.
the longest
They want
3
you to
weeks?
Oh yeah, it was terribly long. What's crazy is that the shop I was in was getting disbanded because of the planes that we worked on. We worked in like this major inspection unit and we bought a bunch of new planes that didn't really require us to inspect them at the same intervals. And so all the people that I worked with, we were getting moved out to the flight line. So we were all going to work outside on the active jets that were coming in and out. And so I wasn't going to be doing the inspection. But once I got the orders, I told them, I was like, hey, it doesn't make sense for me to like work on the flight line and start learning that job when I'm leaving 3 weeks. And I go work in the tool shed. And basically it's like working at Blockbuster for tools. Like you just sit there and you just rent out people tools all day. They come in, you give them the tools they need, you rent it out, and then they bring them back and then you check them back in. Easiest job ever as a mechanic. And it's specifically reserved for people who aren't good at your job. So if you get like kicked off the plane because you suck, they'll make you work in the tool shed, you know? And I was like happy to be there. I'm like, hell yeah, I'm in special ed now. Like, you know, like life is easy. I'm leaving in a couple weeks. And so while I was there, I had free time. So I'd be watching like jujitsu videos and stuff like that. And like I was studying Marcelo Garcia a lot, as one does as a white belt. You know, you just see him, you're like, who's the best at jujitsu? And you like Google stupid stuff like that. And he comes up and I was watching him all the time. And I remember watching his ADCC Open, um, with the finals, the open weight finals, and he was fighting Robert. And like every video I had watched was Marcelo beating everyone, right? And that was the first video I watched where I saw him get submitted, and I was like, holy crap, he lost. I'm like, who's this guy? And I like look him up, and it says Robert Drysdale. And at this point, I didn't know where I was going. I just know I got a new job. I didn't have a location yet for where I was going after I trained for the job. And I looked him up, and I was like, oh, Robert Drysdale. And I was like, huh, where's he at? And because I knew Marcelo was in New York. And I looked him up, and I was like, oh, he's in Las Vegas. That's cool. I've never been to Las Vegas before. I'd be like, that'd be so sick if I got to go there. Hopefully one day, I can go there and train with him or something. And when you get a new job, you have to put on your dream sheet where you want to go. And it's called the dream sheet because it's likely you're not going to get anywhere on the sheet, so it's like keep dreaming kind of a deal. And so I put Las Vegas in every slot. I was just like, and literally I picked it because I had just never been there. I was like, I've never been to Las Vegas. It sounds cool, so I would love to go. And if I can go for free, that'd be sick. And so I put it in every slot. And then like a couple weeks later, I got orders to Las Vegas. And I'm like, yo, I just keep getting lucky.
For somebody who was not in control most of your life, this subset of few weeks, because that's the span of that's the span of time we are talking about, right? Between you getting the job, staying there, selecting the location, and then going, it seems like things happen for a reason. You're a lucky cat, or I don't know, like things finally fall in place.
Yeah, it's one of those things like I said earlier in the conversation, the more you show up and the more effort you put in, the luckier you're likely to get. I feel like fortune starts to favor you a little bit. So if there's like an energy or a force that you tap into, you can only tap into that and capture it when you're actually showing up. I tell my students that opportunity is like a fickle goddess who's not going to wait for anybody. So you have to be putting in effort. You have to be ready for opportunities when they come your way. Otherwise, they'll just go to the next person, kind of a deal. And so for me, I've gotten lucky just by putting myself like in the room where I'm supposed to be, and if I didn't put in that little bit of effort, then it would be impossible for me to get lucky because I'm just not a variable in the equation. So by throwing myself into the mix and putting myself out there a little bit, it allows me to get lucky. Now that doesn't always work, but it's worked in ways that have drastically changed my life. And so, going against what they said, for getting that job, and then just filling out the dream sheet and actually putting where I wanted to put, I ended up getting really lucky and then being able to move here and train with them. And so, had I listened to them,
what is the first time you? What is the first time you meet? What's your feeling? What's going through your mind first time you meet Drysdale?
I'm like in my head, I'm like I already know you, even though like he doesn't know me. And then I went to his gym and I tried a class, right? And I remember when I met him, he was like extremely personable. That was like the first thing that stood out to me, that he remembered my name and everything after the class. And he wasn't even teaching my class because back then we had it separated by white belts and colored belts. And so he had, I think it was actually Rafael Domingos, who was teaching the class. And I took the class, and then like Robert greeted me when he met me. And then like after class, he said bye to me. He was like, oh, how'd you like it, Kris? And I just was surprised he remembered my name. And I told him I liked the class a lot, whatever. And so I ended up like sitting there kind of going home after and thinking, because it was pretty far of a drive from where I lived. I lived like 30 minutes away. And I was just like, well, I should be objective about this and not buy the first car I drive. And so I was like, let me go try out a couple more gyms and see if there's any that I also really like before I just commit to this gym. And so I went to try Cobra Kai, which now it's just Simgo Academy. It's under Simgo. And so he was the coach, and that's actually two of my buddies, Jerry and Shane, are black belts from there. But that I tried that academy, and I didn't feel the same welcoming there. Like I felt like I was there, like they weren't really like super friendly or warm to me. And I was just like, I don't know. I think just gonna train with Robert. And so I just went, and I had another list of other gyms I was gonna try, and I was just like, I don't care anymore. I'm just gonna train with Robert. There's no point. I already kind of made my decision. I was just trying to make sure I wasn't making the wrong one. Um, but then I just committed to the school, and I trained there for 10 years.
It is really fascinating to me that for somebody who was not in control, didn't want to be tied in or told what to do, somebody who really had an issue with authority,
Hmm.
through this random subset of events, from filing for a job, going over your superior's head, getting signatures, figuring out dream sheet, and so on, going to Drysdale's, then going checking other places, but then you stay with Robert your entire tenure from the
Yep.
beginning all the way through your black belt, which is
Hmm.
really unheard of these days.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
That's
something I'm actually
unusual.
very, very proud of.
Yeah, yeah. And it's really unusual, I think, for students in general. And there are many who do, but when you look at global population and percentages, that's actually a minority, isn't it?
Yeah. No, I would say it's definitely a minority, especially among like high level athletes.
Uh-huh.
Most people that I know that are pros didn't stay under the same coach from white to black. Um, And, there's a lot of recruitment in jiu-jitsu,
Hmm.
where, like somebody is already good and then they go to another school to get a more competitive edge or
Hmm.
get more exposure from a marketing standpoint because they're building off of somebody else's brand, that has like big reach, like the AOJs, like the Kingsways, stuff like
Hmm.
that. I'm very proud, not to knock anybody, because I think at the end of the day, your journey is your journey. But I'm just proud of mine, and the fact that like I was able to stay from white to black with Robert. Um, and out of all his black belts, I'm one of the few that have done that. I think it's me and like a handful of other people that did that with him. And so, yeah, I think it's pretty cool.
Was
And
that a
for
conscious
me,
choice? Was that a conscious choice for you? Meaning, like, I'm sticking around, or was it more of a you just loved it so much that you weren't even thinking, or there wasn't a part of a consideration?
no, so just 100% being honest, there's been times where I would get like shiny object syndrome, you
Uh
know,
huh.
and I'm like, oh, the grass might look greener over there, kind of a deal. And anytime I've had my doubts over the years, I've talked to Robert. And I've like just like it like frustrations. You know how this business is.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes like, especially once you've been around a long time, there's a thing that happens with like competitors where inherently if somebody becomes a more seasoned competitor, they tend to want a lot more attention,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And so it can be a kind of a demanding business. And as an athlete, Robert was always there for me. Like he always cornered me. He was always at my tournaments and stuff. But there was times where like I just got like a little like kind of bored with the training environment, or like I would have friends that would leave and like they were close to me at the time. And like sometimes the grass would seem greener. I would just get like a little disgruntled or sour and not really being enjoying my training as much. And there's been times where I've like voiced like my concerns with him. And I'm just like, hey, this is how I'm feeling, kind of a deal. Um, and we talked about it, and I always felt a lot better after talking to him, and just having like a actual man-to-man conversation. Because at the end of the day, like he would just talk to me. He's like, Kris, are you getting hard rounds? Are you beating every single person in the room? You know, like, and I just answering honestly, it's not like I was beating him. So like, and I've always had really good training partners over the years, and no matter what, even like as people have come and go, the room tends to get better over time. And um, I was winning, so at the end of the day, it was just like more cosmetic than anything. I think. And so, I kind of trusted the process and I was like, all right, well, I'm Robert has given me a lot, has taught me a lot. And so I owe a debt to this room in some ways. And I just I started to take pride in kind of the lineage a lot more as I came up. And so, yeah.
I think what's interesting what you're mentioning here is that the fact of the conversation, whether with Robert or somebody else, but you voiced
hmm
your concerns. And I feel like, and I'm curious, now you have your own place, you have your own students, you are in a position of leadership, but I feel like a lot of students don't do that these days. They don't
Yeah.
voice their concern. It is very much internalized, and then decision is made, and then it's too late to really, forget about changing somebody's mind, but really not burning a bridge or perhaps keeping a relationship alive or making a right choice for the student, because that's important too, right?
Yeah. 100%. I feel like people internalize a lot. And then I think part of it is that they're too afraid to have confrontation.
Yes.
And so I feel like because they are afraid of confrontation, they'll make decisions that don't always benefit them in the right ways.
Yeah.
Um, I think, and there's guilt on both sides. I think sometimes gym owners take things too personally, and this is a very personal business. It's not like, it's not like a personal trainer or like a yoga instructor who's just going to do the session at True Fusion, walk away, and doesn't have a relationship with the people there. Jiu-jitsu is a very intimate business. We build relationships, we build friendships with the students. And so, but I think at the end of the day, it's still business, and people are people. And so people are always going to do what people do. And for me, I try not to take things too personal. Like I had a student that, just wanted to leave, that just left recently. And they were telling me, and this is, mind you, this is a white belt who hasn't been even training for 6 months. And they were telling me that like they just feel like the training isn't like what they're looking for. I'm like, how do you know what to look for if you haven't been training for 6 months? You know what I mean? Like you actually don't have like, in companies, there's like some companies run as a meritocracy, right? In which those that have more merit tend to make more decisions and have more vote in how things are run. And so like in jiu-jitsu, I think that makes sense because, it's technical, you're learning from experts. And so um, I think the experts tend to have more merits than the white belts, right? I think that's logical. And so they were telling me that they feel like they're not getting better. And I'm like, you're literally not even 6 months into this. Like, what standard are you making this decision with? And then they told me that one of the reasons why they felt that way is because they came back and they rolled with somebody and they beat them. And I was like, well, one, if you feel like you're not getting better, hold on. I checked the attendance, and that person had come in 5 times over the last 2.5 months, right? Which is obviously like not consistent at all.
Yep.
Like, what are you expecting, right? But because they had come in only 5 times and they were able to beat one of the people that they went with, they felt like that person wasn't progressing, and therefore they're in the wrong environment. And so it's kind of a criticism to my own teaching. They're like, well, that student, I figured that student would have gotten better, and I feel like I'm not getting better. I was like, none of this makes any sense. One, you shouldn't be judging another student so harshly because everyone's journey is different. If I looked at the training environment, I'm like, oh, well, if I'm able to beat the majority of people in here, I'm in the wrong environment. Like, that's not necessarily the case. Like, I work harder than them. I'm more gifted physically, right? So it's like, it's a really stupid way of thinking. And so, I didn't argue with them. I was just like, you're welcome back at any point in time. No hard feelings or anything. I hope you find what you're looking for. Even though, I think they're 100% wrong and it makes zero absolute sense what they're talking about. Cause I'm like, you don't have good perspective on like what this is supposed to be. So you making a decision and pulling yourself out and going to another place, like based off of you feeling like you're not getting technical progression. I'm like, I'm teaching new shit every day. Like students are getting better. You just happen to roll with one who's maybe a little slower than the others. And then I
Do
asked
you
them, I was
think
like,
like
well, I could put you with better people. And they said no, because they won't be able to submit them. I'm like, so this is too easy, but that's too
so?
hard. I'm like, okay.
So wait. So as I'm understanding this story, it's not about getting better, but it's about submitting people.
Submitting people, getting that's the thing. It's a kind of a contradiction. I don't want to go with these
Yeah,
people
yeah,
because it's too hard and I won't win,
yeah,
but I
yeah.
don't want to go with those people because I beat them. I'm like, what do you want me to do? Clone you? You want to just fight yourself all day? Like, like it doesn't make any sense.
Well, but do you think there was anything that you could have said to that individual to change their mind, or there is really not a point to having that conversation because we are not even on in the same universe?
Yeah, I think one, if it was an in-person conversation, I think it probably would have went a little different. It's really easy to say those things over text.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but two, I think that like I'm not in the business of changing people's minds.
Thank you.
I think that yeah, it's it's not my responsibility to show you how dumb the decision you're making is. If you stick with it as you get older, you'll probably realize that. You might come back, you might not. A lot of times I feel like people over the years have left Robert for different reasons. And some of them I'm like, okay, I could see this. Some of the other ones I'm like, you make no sense. This is actually stupid. Um, and sometimes I feel like they realize it, but pride gets in the way, you know?
100%.
Um, but yeah, for me, I was just like, listen, I'm not going to take this personal. Yeah, do I think you're wrong? 100%. Do I think this is stupid? Absolutely dumb. But, you have a right to be dumb. You have a right to make the wrong decisions. And I have a right to not go out of my way to correct you. So,
Kris, there are so many instructors out there that even I personally know that they are on this mission to save students.
crazy.
And I don't mean by saving the student as a member for financial reasons, but I'm talking about provide this point of control where you don't know what you're talking about. I'm going to prove you that you are wrong in a sense. That this is a better choice for you. I see the big picture. You don't.
Yeah.
They're really trying to structure the environment in that sense. And you are describing something opposite. You're describing, well, look, like from my perspective, this is the dumbest thing you can do in the world. But who am I to tell you that you are wrong? Like, you need to experience this on your own, and you have to come to your own conclusion that this perhaps wasn't the smartest choice. Or maybe it is a good choice. Like maybe who knows? Like, we don't know because we don't know what's going to happen in the future. But again, this goes to the point of letting go. Like having this, and I don't know if maturity is the right word or phrase here, but in a sense of this ability to no judgment, allow things to unfold as they do, and you simply trust the process.
100%. That's it. At the end of the day, I can't control anybody except for myself. And I know exactly what you're talking about. There's a lot of instructors. I know plenty of them personally that try to save their students. They're like, no, I'm going to change this person's life. Listen, at the end of the day, it's up to that person to change their own life. Like, you cannot save anyone that doesn't want to be saved. And if you convince them today, guess what? You're going to have to convince them tomorrow again, the day after, the day after, the day after. You're going to continually set yourself up for failure. And for me, that's too much stress on me. Like, it's not my job at all.
I literally had this conversation this morning with somebody. And it's all and correct me if I'm wrong here, because I so much appreciate what you're saying. Is I feel like, quote unquote, saving somebody. First, if they are not ready, all you're doing is wasting your time and introducing stress level for myself. And all that leads is my personal what's the phrase I'm looking for? It just lowers me down as far as my attitude, how I feel, and it just drags me down in setting myself for disappointments, essentially. Right?
100%.
We can't control people, and we can't help them if they don't want to be helped.
100%. You cannot help them if they want to be helped. I feel like that's a failing mission. You're setting yourself up for failure, and even if you do it once, you're probably going to have to do it more than once. And is it
Yeah.
really worth it? You know, at that point, that's not what you're in the business of. You're in the business of helping people by teaching them jiu-jitsu. You're not in the business of changing their mind and refocusing them. For me, I'm like, yeah, you know, if you ask me stuff, I'll answer it. Like if you ask me, like, Kris, like, what are some books that you've read that have changed your mindset? I'll tell you, but I can't make you read them. I can't make you think like me. And you know what it comes from? It comes from like the people I've been around my whole life. I've been around people that refuse to save themselves. And I've seen so many times how people get overextended trying to save someone that won't even do it for themselves. I'm like, if you won't do it for yourself, why would you expect anybody to do it for you? You're not anyone's like burden. It's just like, oh, well, like I have a saying, like if I compete, right, and I've got somebody in a submission and they don't tap, I'll break their arm. I don't care. Right. Not everybody thinks that way. But to me, I'm like, it is up to you to protect your own arm. It is not up to me to protect your arm. If you don't care about your arm, why should I care about it? And so I think the same thing is true in life. It is not up to me to steer your life. It is up to you to steer your life. It is up to you to make the right decisions. It is up to me to show you how to do jiu-jitsu, but it's not up to me to convince you that the methodology that I have is the exact right one for you. You can either see that or you cannot. You can go experiment. You can try out different places. But at the end of the day, you know, we're all adults here. It's not like I'm talking to a child. Like I'm talking to a 40-year-old person who's grown. They're older than I am. Like, why should I have to be shifting that person's mindset? I've already had that burden with my family, people around me. I'm like, I'm not trying to do it in business. We own another company, advertising company. And it's one of those things that we have to do with our clients constantly, where we have to like shift our mindset on how they operate their businesses. Because a lot of them buy into this business and it's like their first time business owners. And I'm like, and that's part of what we get paid to do is educate them on kind of how to think. But I'm like, I'm not doing that in jiu-jitsu. Like I'm just not. I refuse to. I've already had to do it a million times over, and I can already see like it doesn't work long term. It doesn't. People have to want change in order to get it.
But even in that case, I would even say there's a big difference between educating somebody and changing their mind. That's two different things. Like we can have a conversation of what things work and what strategies you should or should not be using, whether advertising or jiu-jitsu. But me trying to convince you that your decisions are good or not good, that this is where you lose me. Like that's not part of my job. And I could love you to death, but we are adults. You can make your own choices.
100%. That's exactly how we run our business. We'll give you the advice, and if you don't want to take it, like we'll just say, okay, cool. Well, any liability on this is kind of on you because you're going against what we're saying. So it's like if I tell you not to do something in a match because it's probably going to lead you to get submitted, and you're like, nah, I'm gonna do it anyway. I'm like, okay, well, if you get submitted, then that's on you, dog. Like it's not on me. I told you not to do it. Like, you know, you're paying for my advice, but you're not taking it. It's kind of pointless.
Yeah, that is so true. Very true.
But yeah,
very true.
I don't know. We can't change people. People have to change themselves.
I like it. Kris, before we start wrapping this up, do you feel like there is this path that your life has taken you? Some curves, up and downs, hills and valleys, some obstacles, and so on. But I feel like you find yourself, and I guess I gotta ask you. I don't know. I'm assuming, but it appears to me that you find yourself in a pretty good spot. You have an academy. You have other businesses. You are part of UFC BJJ. There was only selected group who is part of that crew.
Mm-hmm.
All of that hard work got you to where you find yourself today. Do you think that this is all random in a sense of things happen for a reason, or did your choices lead you to where you are? And I know we talked about that But that was at the beginning. Now let's look at the end
Yeah.
of all of this, where you find yourself today.
I think sometimes I feel like I'm playing a game, like I'm a player just playing a game, and that there's some loose structure to it. But as long as I keep moving forward in the game, I keep figuring things out and getting kind of to the next level. But I never truly know. It's like sometimes it feels like life is just one big simulation. Because like I'll look back and I'm like, yo, how did I even get here? How did I even get here? How? How? I have no idea what I'm necessarily doing all the time. I'm just putting in effort. I'm trying my best, right? But it's like the path in front of me is never completely clear. And that's why I feel like as long as I put some faith and effort in, it has not steered me wrong yet. And so, trusting my own intuition and trusting my own ability to solve problems as they appear has helped me tremendously. Um, but one thing is I try to remain grateful. Looking back, it makes sense how I got here. Looking forward, it never does. And so, um, I don't know if it's like, if it comes down to having some sort of divine plan. I think that like, we're born with all these different routes we can possibly take, and we probably have talents that can take us one way or another. But at the end of the day, we get to choose what we're doing. And so I've met a lot of people who have a lot of gifts who don't know how to use them. And the way that I live my life is I'm trying to minimize the amount of regret I have when I get to the end of it. And so that's how I make all my decisions. And I feel like if most people did that, if they look through the scope of like, will I regret this later? Will I regret not doing this? Will I regret doing this? Um, that game can start to sway in their favor. And I think that that's true for everybody. At least that's what I found to be true. And
Good for you.
so, that's all I can say, brother.
Good for you. Good for you. Look, before we wrap this up, I have last final questions. I ask this every guest, or most of them at least. We all have the pivot point when things started for us. First time on the mat, and you talked about it when it was interesting experience for you, right? Where do you think your life would be if that day you got beat up and you left? You never looked back. You simply turned around and said, screw this. This is not for me. I'm gone.
Oh man, you just gave me the chills asking me that. I've actually never really thought about that. I've literally never, out of all the thoughts I've had, I've never thought about what if I didn't do jiu-jitsu. I would probably be a very low vibrational human being. I think I would be extremely depressed. I probably would still be in the military. And I think if I hadn't made those decisions, I would be looking back at my life like I've regretted the last 10 years. And so, I'm glad that's not the case, because I think regret is one of the nastiest feelings you can feel.
Very toxic.
And
Yep.
yeah, life well lived is one that's not wasted. And so, yeah, I think that's where I would be at a very low point. So I'm grateful that's not where I am.
I love it. Well, good for you. Good for you.
Thank you, brother.
As we are wrapping this up, if anyone wants to connect with you directly as a follow-up to this conversation, or perhaps, need some thoughts, or come even train with you, where are you at? Instagram, social media, websites? I mean,
Yeah.
let's talk about that for a second.
All the above. I'm one of the easiest people to find. Yeah, if you just search my name, the Kris Olivo, that's Kris with a K, KRISOLIVO, on all socials, you can connect with me there. If you want to stop by my academy in Las Vegas, you can just look up our website, potentialjujitsu.com, or just send me a DM. We're at 9640 West Tropicana Ave, Suite 120. Super easy to find. But yeah, reach out. I love connecting with people. And so, anybody who wants to come train with me, I'd love to have them.
UFC BJJ. Next one.
Hopefully next year. Yeah, I was talking to them. They said we might have something cooking for next year. So we'll see. With that, you just kind of got to wait and see what happens. But I'll probably be competing. I'll be competing next year, whether it's with them or not. So you'll see me out there again soon.
Good. Phenomenal. And as always, guys, I'm going to post all the links to Kris's social media and websites, everyone, in the show notes of this episode. So if you want to connect with him directly, feel free to do it with amazing resource from strategic and jiu-jitsu and just life perspective. Kris, thanks for being here. Thanks for sharing your life, sharing your stories, and really opening up. I mean, we dug into some deep stuff here, and I appreciate this conversation, a little over an hour, and sharing your life, sharing your story. Thanks for doing everything you do.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate you guys for listening.
Let's wrap it up for today.
Thank you for listening to RŌL Radio. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to leave us a review and help us make the show even more amazing. For future episodes, check out our website and follow us on all major podcast platforms. Take care.